So we're talking all this week about triggers for autoimmune disease. I do want to touch on something specific, meaning chemicals and heavy metal exposure, and talk exactly how those can affect your thyroid function and trigger an autoimmune condition. So we know from Alessio Fasano that any kind of autoimmune disease can be related to a three-legged stool. With that, you must have three things for autoimmune conditions to exist. First, you must have the genetic predisposition, a genetic susceptibility, say that 5 times fast, to autoimmune conditions. And it does not have to be just Hashimoto's. Your mother could have had lupus or MS. Your father could have type 1 diabetes or Sjogren's. And that autoimmune genetic predisposition sets you up for further autoimmune conditions. So this is going to be a game changer for you. And you can probably hear the excitement in my voice. The latest introduction, the latest member of the family to the Fixxr line is Metabolism Fixxr. And this, oh my God, I formulated this just for all my people out there that need to lose weight, that need help in the weight loss department, that can't lose weight no matter what they do, that feel like they have a slow metabolism, and that might be thinking of trying all those peptides out there, you know, the Beverly Hills soccer mom drug of choice for weight loss peptides. Or even if you're on them already and you're like, man, these are really expensive and I'm still not losing weight, add in Metabolism Fixxr. Here's what I did. I took the power of T2, which increases your basal metabolic rate while you are sitting there watching Netflix. You're burning fat while you're watching Netflix. I combined it with a very unique patented ingredient called Suppressa. Suppressa has multiple clinical trials backing its efficacy in reducing your appetite, decreasing snacking, and providing way more control over your food intake. It is amazing. We also see improved emotional well-being, just decreased food cravings all around, reduced hunger, and weight management. Add on top of that, we have green tea extract, we have purple forest purple tea extract, both of which affect the metabolism in a very positive way without the jitters of normal fat burning supplements out there from the 1980s and 90s, right? The ones that made you feel like you're having a heart attack. You will not have that in any of my supplements, Thyroid Fixxr or Metabolism Fixxr. But Metabolism Fixxr, ooh, yeah, we kicked it up a notch. It is in powder form, so you can drink it through your day. It's going to flavor your water. We got orange crush and refreshing citrus. I love them both. It is going to keep you under control all day long. So you throw a couple scoops in your water bottle in the morning, throw a scoop or two in your water bottle throughout the day. You will have fat burning and appetite control the entire day for what? An eighth of a price of the peptides? Oh my God, you can't go wrong. So grab some Metabolism Fixxr today. Please let me know how you do on it. I am super excited for you. Super excited. In addition to that, the other leg of the stool is intestinal permeability or leaky gut, which pretty much we all have because unless you grew up in a hippie rainforest, you most likely have been exposed to cereal and bread and various gluten contaminants and have taken not antidepressants, but have taken antibiotics and have been exposed to over-the-counter medications and, of course, the chemicals that we were going to talk about today. And then those chemicals can kind of go into the trigger category too. So you have genetics, intestinal permeability, and then you have that trigger that brings out the autoimmune condition that causes that gene to actually express itself. So I'm going to read to you from a study that I love, saved, refer back to quite often in terms of chemicals. So looking at PCBs, so polychlorinated biphenyls, those have thyroid disrupting effects. We know this from studies. And what happens is something like bisphenol A that's in plastic, or phthalates, or brominated flame retardants, anything chlorinated. What that does is it disrupts the thyroid hormone homeostasis, And dietary exposures to PCBs, all of those just mentioned, actually affect serum TSH in human subjects. So what this is telling us is these chemicals that we expose ourselves to either consciously or unconsciously can have an effect on our thyroid function. So not only can it trigger Hashimoto's to present itself, so ongoing exposure, years of exposure, that built up stressor on the body of exposures to chemicals triggers that gene eventually to express itself as Hashimoto's. Now, we talked about the 5 stages of Hashimoto's. If you missed that, I encourage you to go to my YouTube page or my Facebook page and view those 5 stages of Hashimoto's to know exactly where you are. When we're talking about the 5 stages of Hashi, we see that you can have that genetic predisposition in stage 1, and even moving into stage 2, you may or may not see any changes in antibodies or TSH or other thyroid hormone levels. But once you start moving into stage 3, that's where you see the gene expressing itself as it shows on paper in your labs. Now, you may experience symptoms prior to that, because remember, Hashimoto's can be present up to a decade, if not longer, before being accurately diagnosed. So maybe, hypothetically, you were exposed to a large range of toxins and chemicals, and that caused that gene to finally express itself. Okay, in addition to these PCBs, bisphenol A, phthalates, we are also looking at heavy metals such as cadmium. So cadmium is considered a category 1 carcinogen on lungs, testicles, and the prostate. So cadmium accumulates in the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, but also in the thyroid. Cadmium in blood correlates with concentrations in the thyroid. Cadmium blood and urine levels are more elevated in women in fertile age than in men. Mitochondria are the main intracellular targets for cadmium. In chronic cadmium toxicity, multinodule goiter, thyroid globulin hyposecretion, and parafollicular cell hyperplasia are frequent. So we want to make sure that we are every so often tested for these heavy metals to see where our levels are. Because what if you're doing everything right? You're getting all the labs done. You feel like you're on the right medication. You're converting properly, T4 to T3, and yet you're still experiencing symptoms. Could it be that exposure to chemicals and heavy metals are getting in the way? Manganese is toxic at high levels. What else? Glutamate in the form of glutamine. So a lot of people say to supplement with, you can say glutamine for gut health, but for persons with a thyroid condition and also insulin resistance, glutamine, can interfere with thyroid hormone production. So you might want to lay off of that. And if you do have leaky gut, there are other things we can do to heal that. Environmental or occupational exposure to high levels of manganese causes neuropathy similar to idiopathic Parkinson's disease. Dopamine and its metabolites are altered in manganese toxicity and in Parkinson's disease. And they're also able to inhibit TSH secretion. Dopamine and dopaminergic receptors are involved in neurodevelopment and TSH modulation. So this suggests that excessive manganese exposure during gestation is linked to altered neurodevelopmental outcomes due to a dysregulation of dopaminergic control of TSH on thyroid hormone levels. And also thyroid cancer is increased with heavy metal exposure as well. But just so you know, you can see how toxic these chemical exposures and heavy metal exposures can be. And heavy metals, we haven't even got into mercury with amalgam fillings, exposure to asbestos. So there's so many different, and lead, there's so many different exposures that can happen that can alter your thyroid hormone status. It's important to know exactly where you are. Now, this kind of test does not have to be done like we do thyroid testing. You don't have to get chemical testing, heavy metal testing done on a regular basis. But if this is the case, there are things that we can do to remove those toxins from your body, to get down to the cell where they are held and to actually excrete them properly so they don't get recirculated and they're not continuing to affect your thyroid. The biggest thing you can do right now is simply avoidance and elimination. So when you think about chlorine, so we said about chlorinated products, get that filter on your shower. Stop drinking chlorinated water from the tap. When we are talking about bromine, don't be soaking in a hot tub. There's a lot of exposure to bromine. And all y'all who are drinking Mountain Dew, you know there's bromine in that too. I'm sure there's bromine in other soda pop, whatever you say it, type of products. So be careful of that. Switch to a non-fluorinated toothpaste. Do not get your children fluoride treatments. Don't do those little pink pills that we all did when we were young. Get rid of the fluoride, get rid of the bromine, get rid of the chlorine. Stop microwaving your food in plastic. If you haven't done so already, invest in some glass containers. Do not pick up plastic water bottles unless you are on a road trip and it's an absolute emergency. Get a glass, or not aluminum, but a metal type of water bottle, and use that as much as possible. All these things will kind of combine to give you that down the road payback. You might not notice anything right away, but down the road, you'll say, you know, I removed all these toxins from my life. I removed the heavy metal exposure from my life. Even if you don't do a heavy metal test or a heavy metal detox, that's fine. Removal, elimination is the first step. You might actually feel better and notice that your thyroid works better 6 weeks down the road after you eliminate. So take these steps and try to do as much as you can. 80-20 rule. 80% you can control, 20% you can't control. You cannot control being on a road trip and needing to grab a plastic water bottle. You cannot control where all of your food is coming from. You cannot control the fact that you might be showering at a hotel or a friend's house and they have chlorinated water. All of those things are in that 20%. But I guarantee you 80% you can control. So start taking steps now to improve your thyroid function and stop exposing yourself to things that could decrease your thyroid function when we're trying so hard to get you your life back. Thanks for listening to the Thyroid Fix podcast. If you like what you hear, hit the subscribe button so you get updated on every single episode that comes out. Go to my website at amiehornaman.com and feel free to follow me on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram.